Hello, hello. Greetings, everybody. Live chat time again. Number 18. Yeah, holy cow. Monthly live chats, 18. Um, Wherever you are joining from, if this is your first time or if this is a repeat time, please leave a message and let me know which city, which country. As always, I know I sound like a broken record at this point, right? It's the best part is knowing where everyone is from. Through it till I was the first, I want my reward. Hi, Chomio. New York City. All right, in the house. Okay. Um, so this is, by the way, for those of you who are joining for the first time, this is the monthly live chat, which I do on Facebook, my Facebook profile, my Facebook page, YouTube, and then also on Instagram. So if you are curious why I'm like switching back and forth and what the hell am I looking at, that's why, because I've got two screens here. So wherever you're from, throw your name, well, names maybe not on Facebook because I guess I can see your names there, but Instagram, I never know who the hell anybody is with the handles that we have. So Judy from Tijuana, Nancy, hi. Can't remember, Nancy, where you're from. I think it was New York. I might be wrong. Kavork, Toronto. Kavork is an old school buddy of mine from the T Dot. That's where I started dancing salsa. Wyman from New York City. Hi from Black Flags. I cannot see that actual flag, Caroline. So let me know exactly where you're from instead. Herman from Los Angeles. Love your salsa styling. Thank you, Herman. Again, throw your location in, say hello. Don't just be a creep hanging out here and not saying anything else. Okay. Scotland. All right. Caroline from Scotland. Wow. I wonder if I've had people here from Scotland before. I feel like you might be the first. So, a warm welcome to you. Um, really quickly, for those of you, I'm going to continue with everyone, so don't forget, throw in your location. Really quickly, for all of you, these monthly live chats, what is the purpose of them? Like, why am I going live? Especially if you're joining me for the first time, why am I going live? I am doing these monthly live chats because there are a lot of questions that I get from dance students, from people in general when I'm talking to them, from my coaching clients. And then there's a bunch of experiences that I've had myself. And then just a ton of things that day to day life that I observe that I feel I've learned from, that I feel like the answer to those things could help more than just me. And that's why I do these live chats, is to try and share basically everything that I'm getting from life that's helping me live a better life and be a better person and be a better friend and all of those things. And hopefully adding that value to your life in a way that you can also do the same. You know, my motto with my empowered coaching is to help others think, feel, and be empowered. Speaking of which, if you want to grab a shirt with that really cool, super stellar posed shirt, you can always find that on my website under the shop section. Tristan from London. All right, cool. So, a couple of points with this live chat is that the best way to engage with this live chat is to throw in something into the comments. You have questions, throw them into the comments. If you are on Instagram, there's a small question mark feature at the bottom, I believe at the bottom right corner. I'm not exactly sure how that looks if you're watching the live chat versus hosting the live chat, but there's a small question mark feature. So if you have a question, please put it in there. Just because as people enter into the live or leave a comment or anything like that, your question will get scrolled away and it'll be harder for me to find it. If you're on Facebook and on YouTube, comments is the perfect place to add those because I can see them very quickly and very easily. And of course, I can also showcase them on the screen. So if you have any comments or questions or experiences, throw them in the chat. If there's something that I'm saying that's resonating particularly strongly with you, let me know, because a lot of times I do these live chats on a specific topic and I have like a ton of things to say about it. And then I can kind of like just keep on going. And I'm not even sure which parts of those, the live chat or that particular topic or the points that I'm addressing are resonating with you. So if there's something that resonates with you in particular, share that with me. Throw a little heart or a yes or something like that into the comments, okay? So a couple more shout outs. We got Elegant Salsa, Jorge from Puerto Rico, Chris from Paris, Leah Resner. I can't remember where you're from. I'm sorry. And okay. So again, if you are joining, throw your location into the chat. Even if I've seen you before, I will give you another shout out as always. And of course, for those of you who are joining for another time, another iteration of these live chats, I really appreciate your presence and I appreciate your support. One other thing is the feedback form. Feedback form is magnagopal.com/feedback. You can also go to my website, go to the contact section, and there is a bunch of forms there with the live chat feedback form there. The feedback form is super, super important. And the reason I always stress this and the reason I bring it up so many times is because that is where you can share your experiences privately, especially if you don't feel like posting a comment publicly. It's where you can share your experiences privately. You can also ask me other questions, and that way at least I have one place where I can go to find all the questions that you would like to have answered. And it just helps me understand what parts of today's session really resonated with you. So if you're watching this live, you can go into Facebook and on YouTube, you can go into the description and find the link to the feedback form. If you're on Instagram, it's magnagopal.com/feedback. And basically, there's a couple of little questions in there, but in general, what I would like to know is what value did you gain from it? What else could I possibly answer that would help deepen the understanding? And anything else that you'd like to share, especially if you'd like to only share that privately, the feedback form is the best place to do that. Cool. All right. Matt from Baltimore. Degur. Cannot remember. I think Peru? Camilo, so train between Lincoln and London. Hopefully we'll get to see each other when you're actually here in New York. All right. So today's topic, okay. I'm not actually going to go into some of the other off-topic questions for right now, but today's topic is about communication. And one of the reasons that I decided to address this is because, I mean, we're always communicating with people. And most of the time, the communication that we have is easy, right? We have something that we understand, that the other person understands, and we're like, hey, what do you think about this? And that's really easy. But the difficult thing is when we have an uncomfortable topic, when we have a problem or an issue with somebody that we want to address, and we're not sure how to do that. And so this whole topic today about effective communication is to kind of understand some of the obstacles that present themselves to our ability to communicate effectively, and a couple of tools and solutions that we could all use to help us communicate more effectively. Now, before I go into the topic, I would say, even though I might have some gems of wisdom, I just want to point out I am very, very human, okay? In terms of I have been at fault in almost everything that I bring up, every topic that I address, every question that I might answer with some really useful tips. Most of them come from a result of me doing something incorrectly, me misunderstanding, me miscommunicating. And it's through that understanding that I'm able to better communicate. And that's why I'm presenting it to you. So please don't look at me like, oh my God, she's always perfect and she's always gets things right. No, the reason I'm better and better each day is because I take time to reflect on the things that don't go as smoothly as I would like them to. And my attempt to improve upon those things is what allows me to get better and better each day. Okay. So there's something that you're like, oh man, I wished I could be like her. I'm like, of course you can. Okay. It is completely within the reach of every one of us. A couple more shout outs. Luis from Moscow. Moscow or Moscow? Maybe I'm not getting this. Caroline, it's my first time here as I had a notification you're live. I want to say you're my favorite salsa dancer. I'm incredibly inspired by musicality. Been dancing since 2009. Wow, cool. Well, Thank you, Caroline. Glad to have you here. All right. So, last thing. How did I forget that? If you would like to support, if you enjoy this, any of the content that I put out there, especially this live chat, if you'd like to show your support, one of the simplest ways is to subscribe and to like whatever the content it is that you like. And then obviously, if you find value in that, to share that with other people. Tag me if you do. That way, if anyone else has any questions, I can always address them in the comments as well. If you want to show more support, I will not deter you from doing so. If you want to show more support, you can always treat me to a coffee. There's a link in Facebook and on YouTube, a Ko-fi, Ko-fi link that you can treat me to a coffee. And if you're on Instagram, you can always get a badge, I guess, to show your support there. Okay. That aside. All right. Done with that. So first thing is that whenever we have a problem with someone, it's not that when we communicate that we don't have the intention of having a solution. It's just this problem with how we communicate that solution with somebody, right? So I would say for me, in communicating a difficult issue, as well as hearing someone else communicate something difficult with me, I have had struggles, right? I've had issues brought up to me about something I said or that I did where I felt personally attacked, right? Someone says, hey, Magna, you did, I can't believe that you said this. And I've overreacted to that. I've lashed out. I've said things that I didn't mean. Maybe I've cursed unnecessarily. Many times I've shut down completely when someone's bringing up an issue just because I don't want to confront it. And then in those extreme cases, I've walked away completely without ever giving it a chance, right? And then on the other side, there are things that I've wanted to address with somebody. And when I bring up that issue, whatever that is, whether it's something that they said or did, or just something that I felt based on what I was observing, I would get a response that didn't necessarily make sense, or it wasn't clear that I was understood, but I could feel all of this emotion in them. And then sometimes I got that defensive kind of flip reaction, which is, I would say something like, hey, there's this time that you did X and this really hurt me. The first response I get is not, oh, I'm sorry that this hurt you, but rather, yeah, but you, right? I don't know how many of you have experienced that whole, yeah, but you, or yeah, but anything, right? Basically this idea of, I hear what you're saying. Well, I'm not really listening, but I'm going to flip the script because I don't want to address the problem that's actually in front of me. I'm going to just point the finger back at you, right? I'm going to take the entire script and point it back at you so that now you can't address the issue. You can't attack the problem that's at hand. You need to now go and defend yourself because I'm just showing you that this, right? So I don't know if you've experienced that. If you have, throw that in the comments and just kind of like raised hand, let me know, because that's probably one of the biggest challenges for the communication that I have with someone that is pertaining to an issue about something that person did or something that happened between us or something they said, right? Is this, yeah, but. So what I found is that whenever it comes to addressing these issues, whether it's me trying to find that resolution or the other person trying to find the resolution, there are a few things that end up sabotaging the final outcome. Why am I going blurry here? There we go. Okay. There are a few things that end up sabotaging that final outcome. And I'm going to narrow it down to 5 things that will go into a little bit more detail. But if you feel like there are other things that sabotage it, like throw them in the comments. We can talk about that more. If you have any questions about the points that I'm going to make, you can also, throw that into the comments and I'll try and address them as we go through them. And likewise, if you have further experience or other solutions with these things, you can also add those into the comments. But I would say the five main things would be timing, emotions, understanding, personalization, and then finally tone and wording. So when it comes to timing, I feel like a lot of people want to talk, but it's not necessarily the best time to have the conversation. When it comes to emotions, it's this inability to control them or articulate them properly. When it comes to an understanding, there's a lack of understanding, and yet we still have this rush to speak and to act despite not completely understanding. When it comes to personalization, there is an issue with pointing the finger at the person instead of at the action, instead of the behavior, and making it about who they are and not what they did. And then finally, when it comes to the tone and the wording, I mean, we've all heard this, it's not just about what you're saying, but it's also about how you're saying it. So going into those points, before I do that, I'm going to just address a couple of comments. I love, like, if you're joining on Instagram, fantastic, love it. But I always say that Facebook and YouTube are a little bit better because you can really go into longer comments without getting cut off. Well, actually, no, Facebook and YouTube do cut off the comments too, don't they? I know some of you have written some long comments, so sometimes that gets chopped in half. Kavork said, definitely it's difficult to express your feelings without triggering someone. So we are going to get into this. Michael, I see a very long comment. I will address that as well. So let me go into these 5 points first, okay? Before we go into that, I'd like to start with intention, right? The most important thing, actually, it applies to literally everything we do in life, is what is your intention, right? Do you want to just vent, for example? There are plenty of times that you think you want to have a conversation when really all you want to do is just blah, 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 all right? Verbal diarrhea of every thought and feeling that's going through your head, right? Or do you want to find a solution? And do you want to have a conversation and find that solution? If you want to vent, nothing wrong with that, right? Like, people are like, oh, you're just venting, you're just letting things out, you're not actually trying to find a solution. No, sometimes that venting is a good thing, right? Sometimes that venting is almost like a brainstorming session when we're thinking about coming up with ideas for something. Instead of just focusing on that one idea, why not discuss that idea to see what other perspectives you can get, to see what other solutions or things you haven't considered could be included into that. So if it is venting and it's not a conversation that you're trying to have in that moment, there's nothing wrong with that. But then you want to consider who you are speaking to. Because if I have an issue with somebody about something that they did, but I'm in the mood to vent, I don't think I should be venting to that person. All right? I should probably call up my best friend or a therapist, or be waiting at the bus stop and just start randomly venting to the person who's also waiting at the bus stop. But I don't want to do that venting to the person who I actually want to try and find a solution with. And if it's to find a solution, well then, again, like I said with the brainstorming, right? If it's to find a solution, perhaps if there's somebody that you do trust and that you feel comfortable in sharing your thoughts and ideas and feelings with, perhaps it's worth actually speaking to somebody else before you get into the conversation with the person that you're actually interested in terms of the problem and the issue and the solution, right? Because it will allow for these other ideas. It'll help clarify whatever it is that you're thinking and feeling, and it'll help you better address the actual issue instead of just whatever's rising up in you, right? So for a little question to all of you, I mean, how often have you vented thinking that you're trying to have a conversation? Because I'll tell you, I've done that many times in my past, and I might even do it in the future when I'm really not aware of the moment, not thinking about what's happening. There are many times where I'm like, hey, listen, I want to talk, and then I'm just letting everything out, many things that have nothing to do with the problem, nothing to do with the situation at hand, but just letting it all out. And I know from experience that that's not the person I should have been talking to if that's what I wanted to do. Okay. Second thing, timing, or rather first thing in my list of the 5 saboteurs, right? But intention aside, once you've set your intention, then the question is of timing. So if you do want to have a conversation with somebody, timing is super, super key. The right time depends on many things, right? And the problem is that we have a tendency to approach the timing of something being addressed very selfishly. Well, what do I mean by that? I mean that we think that when we feel like we want to talk, then that's the time to talk, versus the time that would also be appropriate for the other person to listen, right? So it's not that we are intentionally selfish in those moments, but we're definitely not seeing the bigger picture. And as a result, the only person that we're focused on in that moment is ourselves. And so I want to talk means I want to talk when the hell I want to talk. And it doesn't really matter if that other person's in the mind state of, I also want to listen, right? So this is a problem that I would say affects almost every situation sometimes, right? Even if you're not actually addressing a problem with somebody or some difficult conversation, even when you're just having chats with people. Like there are many times I still do that now with friends, right? I just call them and I'm like, I'm ready to talk and I don't know what the hell they're doing. I don't know if they're busy, right? I don't know if they have somewhere to be or if they have other thoughts on their mind where they can't actually talk with me, right? So if someone is busy, or if they have a full plate of issues that they're dealing with in that moment, or if they're exhausted, or if they're on vacation, or if they're at work, right? We sometimes, when we say I want to talk and that person has all of these things on their plate, we kind of feel like, oh, so you're not interested. You're not interested in talking, or you're not interested in hearing me talk and you just want to avoid this. And it's not necessarily that they aren't interested in addressing the issue, but it's almost certain that they don't have the bandwidth to give it, or you, right, the full attention that it deserves. So it's always useful to find this out first, right? So when it comes to timing, and you want to have a good conversation, you want to have productive, meaningful conversation that ideally, hopefully, you can find a solution to by the end of that conversation. The timing is not just about the fact that you have a problem or you have observed something and there's something that you want to address, right? And you're ready to talk about it. That's great. Good for you. But what about the person that you need to speak to? Are they ready? Are they in the best mind state to receive the information without clouding it with all of the other things that are happening in their lives, right? So, I mean, I don't know about all of you, but how many times do you end up, starting a conversation with someone without having a check, right? Or even asking, like, are you free? Are you available? Are you ready? Can you give this the attention that it deserves and that it needs? Right? Ooh, lots of comments. Woo. I'm gonna come back to this momentarily, but answer that in the question in the comments as well, like for yourself in terms of your way of approaching things. Like, how often have you approached the timing of a conversation from a completely self-motivated perspective, not necessarily intentionally, but definitely out of a lack of awareness, right? All right, I'm definitely going to come to all of this stuff too. So, third thing, or sorry, fine, I keep on adjusting them based on intention. Second thing, emotions. Okay. The comment that everyone says, like, oh, you're too emotional, right? There's nothing wrong with emotions, but it is definitely an obstacle to overcome in a conversation where we're trying to find a solution, only because what we feel can overshadow absolutely everything else that's happening in that moment, including reality, right? There are so many things that I have personally felt that did not bloody exist, right? If I wanted to go back into relationships, right? This is a perfect one. Relationships. And I'm sure everyone's been there, whether you want to admit it or not. I have felt insecure and fear and a feeling that somebody is about to be disloyal to me because I was not communicating with them and because I was imagining everything, right? So even though everything was in my imagination based on something that would happen that I didn't clarify, that I don't understand, that I'm just making an assumption about, and it's in my head, but the feeling is reality, right? The feeling is present. The feeling is visceral. I can feel it in my body. It feels like it happened, right? And that's the problem with our feelings and our emotions, is that they can truly overpower everything else that is relevant to the solution. Again, going back to intention, what is the intention, right? Are we looking for a solution, or are we just looking to vent, right? Are we entertaining the reality? Are we entertaining the success of the relationship? Or are we just entertaining our thoughts, which have their own life, right? And they can just really spiral out of control. So that's one issue, right? Is that the power of emotions, power of what we feel can in fact overshadow everything. And that's how they can become an obstacle to arriving at a solution. The second thing is that we sometimes, I would say more often than not, lack the ability to clearly articulate what we're feeling. Right? We would say that we're angry about something, but we don't narrow it down to, I feel betrayed. I feel disrespected, right? I just say, I'm angry, right? And I might be able to outline the actual action, but I just say I'm angry, right? So it's a little bit of a difficulty in articulating exactly what I'm feeling. And then the third part, and this kind of addresses what you said, Kavork, earlier, but this is less about the other person, a little bit more about us, is that we rarely delve into our own experiences, right? And our own history, our own life, all the things that have happened to us, all the things that we've gone through that have combined to make a certain situation, a certain action, a certain word triggering to us, right? We haven't identified those personal triggers. We kind of get upset about something, but we don't we might get upset about some things rather, and we say, oh, it's because of X, but we don't actually further question that and say, why does X trigger me so much, right? What is that tied into? And I'm not claiming to be a therapist or anything like that, but that's what they do, right? They sit there and they delve into it, keep on asking questions. What about your parents? What about all of this stuff? What happened when you were a child, right? And maybe it doesn't even have to go that far, but it could be something as simple as the last conversation that you had, right? The last time somebody said something that was along the lines of what you're hearing now, or somebody did something that was along the lines of what you're experiencing now. And all that is tied to that, all the emotions that are tied to that, right? Um, I could give you an example of just certain behaviors in intimate relationships, right? When let's say the person that you're dating has a friendship with someone of the opposite sex, and you're sitting there. Some of us haven't dealt with anyone who's cheated on us, so we feel very confident, we feel very secure. But people, those of us who have had relationships where we were cheated on, right, would immediately see the new person who has done nothing whatsoever to justify that feeling of jealousy or insecurity, see that person spend time with someone of the opposite sex and immediately go back to that last relationship where we got cheated on and say, well, since you're doing this and the last time this was done, this was the outcome, that means that you're doing this. And because that was the outcome, I'm going to feel the same way, right? Like we keep mixing the present and the past in a way that jeopardizes our future because they're not connected in that way, but they are connected in the way that we're triggered by something. And so it's important for us to actually stop and ask why we're feeling something, right? Because sometimes the conversation might not even need to be had, right? If I'm upset by something that somebody did that I'm truly actually upset by the feeling I had when somebody else did something because that person actually cheated, for example, then I need to maybe stop and ask, is this person doing anything that's inappropriate? Like, am I just imagining this? And you know what? Maybe I am, because they've done nothing to justify this feeling, this reaction. They are completely devoted. They're super loving. They're all of these things. Well, why am I feeling this? This is not about them having a friend of the opposite sex or spending time with a person of the opposite sex. That's not the issue. The issue is me, right? The issue is my past, and the issue is my baggage, right? So when it comes to emotions, right, that is those 3 points I would say, right, is mainly that they are overpowering, incredibly overpowering, that they can distort reality. The second issue is that we have a difficult time articulating it, expressing really what we're feeling and narrowing it down. And then the third is that sometimes what we're feeling has nothing to do with a problem with the situation that we have at hand, but really a problem that we have with an experience that is in our past that we are still attached to, that is creating a trigger for that, right? So the problem is not emotions, experiencing them, right? We're like, oh yeah, too emotional. It's okay to have emotions. In fact, it's very human to have emotions, but it's about identifying what we're feeling and then finding the words to articulate that as clearly and as calmly as possible. And then, of course, adding that hint of like vulnerability, right? Saying, look, I know you're not perfect. This is what I'm feeling, but what I'm feeling is probably because I'm not perfect either. So introspect, right? Reflect on your own experiences. Think about what you're feeling, why, and then more importantly, is when it comes to communicating that, think about how you would like to be spoken to yourself, right? Again, back to that kind of selfish intent that's unintentional, rather, right? Is that we just speak because we feel the need to speak. And if it was us on the receiving end of someone who's feeling hurt by something that we did or said intentionally or unintentionally, right? How would we want to be spoken to if we actually want to maintain that relationship? And we don't always approach our conversations and our dialogue in this way. We don't actually do the same, right? We don't put ourselves in the person's shoes to express ourselves that way. So that's emotions. And 3 more points that I mentioned before is understanding, right? So understanding is usually the way understanding plays a role is that we tend to act or react with a lack of understanding, right? And it comes not just on the part of the person who is listening to us, right? Who's saying something as a result to us saying something and not having understood us, but it's sometimes also us, like going back to the emotions. Sometimes we don't understand actually what is the root cause of whatever it is that we're feeling. So there's this lack of understanding on both sides. And when that lack of understanding is present, well, there's more room for confusion, there's more room for conflict, and there's more room for tension, right? And just a poor outcome overall. So personally experience, like I remember having this, it was chat, it wasn't even a conversation actually, right? It was just something that I had proposed, and I had written out something very, very long, very detailed, with tons of points to actually address most of the concerns that somebody might have. And I got a reply to my post, my lengthy post, with an answer that was saying that they were triggered, that they were really upset by it. But within the comment that I received, there was also this this sentence that said, I'm so triggered that I cannot even complete it. Like I need to calm down before I read the rest of it. Right? So that lack of understanding, like, so there was no further dialogue from there. Right? There's not really much conversation to be had. I mean, and you're admitting that you haven't read it entirely. You're admitting that the first part of it bothered you. I can clearly see that. But you're also admitting that you have no desire to understand, that you didn't even like. Why do you think I wrote so much? Do you think I just wrote the rest of it was like A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D, A, B, C, D? No, of course I wrote out reasons and explaining whatever the issues that might arise. Like, but your commentary in that moment is expressing just that. It's saying, I don't care to read the rest. I don't want to understand where you're coming from, but I have a reaction and I'm going to express it. And I'm going to express it in a way that's quite attacking and quite emotional, and not calmly. And so now I am tending to an emotion that probably would not have arisen if you took the time to actually listen and or read rather in that case, right? So when it comes to that understanding element, there's when we're about to speak, like, so in this case, I would say more on the recipient side, right, with expressing a problem, because they had a problem with what I had written out, but probably not really had a problem with the whole thing if they had read the whole thing, right? So first is reflecting on what you're thinking and what you're feeling before speaking, right? The second is asking questions, right? I've always said this in all my classes, to anyone and everyone when I'm having a solid conversation, is ask questions, because the more questions you ask, the more clarification you can find, right? Ultimately, especially in classes like dance, I'll go back to dance. Most people come into class and they just sit there and they take in the information that they're getting, right? Like robots, like just, okay, program me, go ahead. I'm here to receive all this information. The problem is we're not robots and we don't process information like that, right? So we need to be able to understand what it is so that we can actually put it into application. But we're not asking questions to understand. And it's not even to say that it's not explained well, but maybe we want a further clarification, or maybe there's something that's missing. And the person that's communicating that to us did not think about that, right? There are many times that I prepare speeches and presentations or workshops where I have an idea of the many things that might need to be addressed. I'm trying to cover all my bases and I'm writing everything down. And when I present with the intention of hopefully that I cover all those bases, but I don't know everything, right? So the best way to clarify that is to ask questions. So if you're in a conversation, ask the question, I'm sorry, did you mean this, right? I heard this, XYZ, but how should I interpret this? Does this mean A, or does this mean B, or does it mean something else? Can you help me understand? Right? And then the third part of the understanding process, I would say, is reiteration, is to make it clear what you actually did understand so that you can move from a balanced point, right? That you can be on the same page before you take the next step going forward, because that tends to happen a lot too, right? We're like, yeah, I understood. What did you understand? Like maybe you didn't get the actual message that I was communicating and you got a different message. So saying that this is what I understood allows us to say, great, let's move on. Or completely the opposite. Actually, no, that's not what I meant. Let's go back to this point, or what part did you not understand? Right. And the thing with this process when it comes to understanding is it's a repetitive process, right? Not just in life in general, but within a conversation, it repeats and recycles and repeats and recycles, right? It's just constantly happening. So reflecting on what you're thinking, what you're feeling before speaking should be a part of your automated process. Asking questions throughout that conversation should be a part of the automated process. And then reiterating that understanding should be a part of that process, so that every time you're starting a new point, it's very clear what you're trying to communicate and what has been understood. All right. And then last 2 points, and then we're going to go right into the comments and the questions. And of course, I have this long outline that I wanted to address. And I said 30 minutes. I think that's what I was planning on, was to try and keep it concise, but these chats always go on longer, and I'm actually totally fine with them. As long as you guys get some value out of it, that is the main thing. And speaking of which, if you're just joining, you might have missed some of the other points. And why do you keep blurring on Instagram? You might have missed some of the other points that I mentioned before. The replay of this chat will be available on YouTube. If you're on YouTube already, you already know exactly where it is. If you're on Facebook, YouTube channel will be where to find it. If you want to support the live chats, and if you want to support the channel, if you want to support me, simple, no cost way to do that is just to hit subscribe, hit like, and then share it, especially if you find some value in whatever you're hearing, or if there's something that, even if you'd like to debate, right, you can share that, and then we can engage in a debate with that as well. And of course, if you want to show more support on Facebook and on YouTube, you can go check into the descriptions. There's a link to treat me to a coffee. I would gladly take your coffee over the one that I am drinking right now. Really simple hazelnut espresso coffee, which is quite delicious though, and it smells amazing. And it smells amazing in the kitchen. And then finally, the feedback form. So wherever you're at, maybe you can open up a link in another tab or in another browser while I'm just filling this information in, and come back to me in a second. magnagopal.com/feedback, and you should be able to find the form for a feedback for this live session. If you have attended a live session in the past and you've completed the feedback form, amazing. I love you. Thank you so much. I appreciate it so much. But this live session, every live session is different. We cover different topics every time. There are different questions. There's different comments. And so I would really appreciate it if you could complete it again, right? And if you're completing it for the first time, Caroline, that would be amazing. But anyone else who's present right now on Instagram, Facebook, or on YouTube, I would really love it if you guys could do that. So magnagopal.com/feedback. Let me know if there's value that's been added into your life. Ultimately, that's the whole purpose of these live chats, right? Like, the goal is to take the lessons that I've learned and to share them in a way that hopefully you can also have value added to your life, but also have some tools in your toolbox to tackle some of these issues if they should come up in your life as well. Okay. All right. So let's go back on point. There's just 2 more points that we have: personalization and then tone and wording. So personalization. This is about what you're pointing your finger at, right? When we bring up an issue, when we have a problem, sometimes we forget that the problem is with something that was done or something that was said, something that happened, not the person themselves, right? But we point the finger at the person, unfortunately, right? And that kind of ties into the wording that we use. So there's a huge difference between saying you're disrespectful versus what you did was disrespectful. If you say you're disrespectful, I'm going to be a little bit defensive, right? Like, oh, you're attacking my character, you're attacking who I am. But if you say what you did was disrespectful, I might be a little bit more inquisitive. What did I do that was disrespectful, right? I'd like to understand that. But if you attack who I am, most likely you will get a defensive reaction. And even if, right, there are people who have those tendencies, there are people that you could say, man, that person is just always disrespectful. And you might be 99.9% accurate in that statement. But the truth is that people change. We all know that. I'm sure we've all been there. I am telling you from experience that I definitely have, right? I've done things habitually, right, that were not good representations of behavior or character. But I'm a different person today, right? People change constantly. They could change either through a willingness of their own because they want to be better, or they get forced into it through the circumstances, right? Maybe you have a certain way of being around your family as a kid, and then you get a job later in life and you realize, oh shit, I can't have that attitude. Maybe my mom will let me go by, with having this kind of snarky talk and quick comebacks, but my boss won't, right? So you're forced to change, and people have that ability to change, to meet circumstances, to meet their environment, to meet their desires. ultimately we are all capable of that change. I believe that. I like to extend that benefit of the doubt to everybody else too. Um, and many of the things we change, right, are not even things like we don't necessarily recognize something as bad when we're doing it because maybe we don't have that awareness, right? We don't have that understanding, or no one's pointed it out, or everybody else is doing the same thing. So why would it be bad, right? So it requires that level of awareness to understand what is the problem with this? Why is it a problem? Why is it a problem all of a sudden? Or why is it a problem with this person? How can I, like, did I ever consider this in the past? Maybe somebody just never told me before, right? So that awareness is what also allows us to actually create the change. Otherwise, why would we change? If everything's working out perfectly and it doesn't affect anybody else, then why why would I need to change? But if we make that problem, right, whatever that problem is about who that person is, instead of something that they did, they're going to feel more resistance, because changing who I am as a complete individual sounds like a task for a lifetime, right? I mean, you ever feel like you've gone through an existential crisis, is because, like, who am I? Who am I going to be, right? Like, it's just very painful, and it's something that's really difficult to tackle. But changing a certain action or a certain behavior or the certain way I say something, now that's something I can work on, and that's something I can take an immediate actionable step to by not doing that anymore, right? So wherever you can, you want to try and keep the focus on the issue at hand, right? So even if it's something that's habitual, even if it's something that they've been doing all the time, and this is really representative of their behavior, not necessarily, again, who they are, it's better to say, or it's better to not say, you're just this type of person, and say, you continue to do X behavior, and this is a problem because whatever, right? And then finally, I'm going to talk about this one last point, and then I want to get into some of these comments, which are really fantastic. I cannot wait to read all of them. I just don't get sidetracked on the topic yet, because wow, of course, it's a long one, right? Tone and wording, and this kind of ties into our emotions as well as our understanding. What we can't control, right? Especially when we can't control our emotions and what we're feeling, we can't control our tone and language, right? Just like we scream out if something hurts, right? Well, we're feeling this pain. Well, that's more physical. But let's say you miss the bus. It's not physical, right? So you miss the bus, and the next bus is going to be in 2 hours. You're never like, oh, bummer, darn, right? Let me be all calm and that's unfortunate in life, right? We're like, oh, right? I mean, I think I can say that. Like, shit, like you're so pissed off, like what you're feeling just comes out and expresses itself in the most instinctive guttural way, right? However it comes out. Same thing applies to understanding. When we lack an understanding, we lack the ability and the empathy to find the right words. Right? If I don't understand how to communicate in a certain situation, I'm probably not going to communicate using the proper words. If I don't understand the person who's in front of me and how they might feel, I might not use the right words. I might be really cold and calculated in what I'm saying versus finding some compassion in the words that I use, right? And this also applies to kind of how people communicate and understanding, and it differs with everybody. It constantly changes, even with those same people, and that's what we need to keep in mind, right? Is to constantly be adaptable and adjust what we're saying and kind of tweak it, right? So that it can fit the situation, the conversation at hand. When I'm having a conversation with one of my best friends about, I don't know, something silly and something we can joke about, yeah, I can call her some silly names and use curse words and all of that stuff. But if I'm having a conversation with my best friend about something that's troubling me or that's a more serious topic, then my tone changes. This is my best friend. She knows me forever, right? She knows that I don't mean anything harmful by anything I say, but I watch what I say. I watch my words and I watch my tone because of the situation at hand, because of the topic that's being discussed, right? So what you're saying is really, really important. And even if you can't find the right words for it, express that, right? Sometimes we have to say, listen, I can't find the right words to say this, but this is what I'm feeling. So you can even preface it by saying, look, this might not be the right way for me to communicate this, but I cannot find the right words. But this is not necessarily exactly what I mean. I would love to find the right words. Maybe they can help you with that, right? Another example was with a conversation with a friend of mine. And we were talking about, again, communicating and how important it is to have like healthy communication and being open and honest without pointing the finger and personalizing things and not getting defensive and all of that stuff. And he was saying like, yeah, you know, with my girlfriend, like whenever she's bringing up stuff, I'm telling her, okay, 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 right? But just repeatedly saying, okay. Now, on important matters, personally, I don't know about you guys, if someone just says, okay, 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 I don't know what the hell that means. Like, is it okay? I understand. Okay, I will take this next step of action. Okay, I'll take some of these actions, but not those actions. Okay, I don't care. Or is okay, just shut up already, right? It could mean so many things. And this goes back to that understanding of the person that you're speaking to as well, right? What do you want to communicate? And what would best help you get your message across? And that might involve using different words, for example, right? We tend to limit our vocabulary uh, to just what we want to say, but in reality, we should always be trying to expand our vocabulary to what we want understood, right? It's like teachers, dance, for example. I could come in, or I could go to a ballet class, right? I'm not familiar with ballet or any of the kind of really traditional, very technical dances, right? I know salsa. So if I went into a ballet class and they're like, oh, plie, position 4, position 3, I'm like, that's great. I mean, especially if it's the first time, right? Of course, if I walk into an intermediate advanced class, I should know already. But let's say I go into a beginner class and they're like, okay, position 1, and everyone else is doing it, but I don't understand that. Like, position 1 means nothing to me. It's my first time here, right? Are you just speaking to say what you need to say because you need to get through this class because that's the class that you're getting paid for to stand up there and teach? Or are you trying to get your students to understand? Because if it's to get me to understand, again, forgive me if this is not position 1 for all you ballet trained dancers, okay? Position 1, have your both feet pointing out at a 45-degree angle. Oh, okay, cool. I understand that. But maybe I don't understand 45-degree angle. So then you change your wording. Have both of your feet about pointing to the corners of the room. That's easier, right? So it's not just about speaking, and it's not just about using the words that make sense to you. Yeah, for that ballet teacher who's got 50 years of experience, position 1 is just instinctive. What do you mean you don't understand what position 1 is, right? For someone who's got an engineering background, 45 degrees makes sense, right? Mathematical back, 45 degrees makes sense. For someone who doesn't have all of that, what would make sense to them, right? So the wording is really important, and you have to understand that whenever you're speaking, depending on what your purpose is, back to intention, depending on your intention. Are you just trying to vent? Because if you're venting, say whatever the hell you want in whatever order you want and however you want to say it, right? But make sure it's not to the person that you're trying to address the problem with. And if it's not to vent, if it's to communicate, if it's to converse, if it's to to address a problem or an issue and find a solution, then your words really are a representation of how much you want to be understood versus how much you know and how much you understand yourself, right? So those are the main points. So just to kind of summarize that up really quickly, I would say that the main issues that we kind of tend to struggle with when it comes to having meaningful conversations, especially when it comes to difficult conversations, right? Where we have a problem or an issue and we're trying to resolve that. The main obstacles that I've seemed to encounter on a regular basis, including in my own life and in my own conversations, right, is timing, emotions, understanding, personalization, and then tone and wording. If you're just joining the chat now, or wherever you are right now, you can always go back and watch the replay on YouTube. I've addressed all these points as well as some ways to think about and how to approach it. But otherwise, those are the main points if you're just looking for that summary. And then final point before I get into all these comments is ultimately, whatever your intention is, you have to set some boundaries. I've talked about like judgment, rejection, saying no, and all of these things on many other videos on my YouTube channel. You can always go and check out the channel as well as past live chats, which a good friend of mine, Wade, is helping with in terms of timestamps. So, he's the person you want to thank for that. But boundaries are really important as well, because it doesn't matter what your intention is. If the person that you're speaking to does not have the time or is not ever making the time, then you have to question whether it's worth it, right? You got to set your own boundaries, because this is your energy and your effort that's going into trying to make this conversation happen, right? To communicate with this person. And that takes up a lot of time, not just physically, right, in our lives, but also emotionally and mentally. If the other person is too emotional for a productive conversation, right? And they're maybe personalizing things without you personalizing things, and they're getting defensive. Like, yeah, but you, oh, and well, what about that time? And, or, well, this happened, right? And kind of redirecting the conversation to something that has nothing to do with the problem at hand, or is disrespectful, yelling at you, right? Or using inappropriate wording, calling you names, pointing the finger at you, you're attacking your character, or any of those things, right? That's another boundary that you need to set about what is acceptable way to have conversations in my life, period. And that's the way I expect to be treated. And likewise, I am going to also do the same in return. And then finally, when it comes to that intention, maybe the person you're bringing up the problem with, you might have an intention of addressing the problem and finding a solution, but the person that you're speaking to doesn't care, actually, right? You're not that important to them. They might be important to you, and that relationship might be important to you, but for them, it's, take it or leave it. And if that's the case, and the person doesn't have an intention of reconciling or addressing the problem or finding a solution and finding a resolution and maintaining the relationship, then those are those moments where you got to walk away. Some cases you leave it for another time. In some cases, it's just not worth it, right? So let me address now, going into these comments. Michael talked about so actually I'm going to get to that second. So Matthew asked, how would one be able to tell someone to separate business from personal without offending them? Well, Matthew, if you have a specific example, I could attend to that. But if I had to generalize, again, this is back into, seeing the question that I'm getting, and this is what I'm understanding it to be. It depends on, I guess, what you're addressing with someone. Like, what is the need for them to separate business from personal, right? For me, for example, dance, salsa, for many years was work, but it's also personal. That is my biggest passion, right? That's something that I felt truly fondly about. Like I still have this desire, right? This curiosity about dance. And so for me, it's work and it's personal, right? So someone saying, well, don't be so strict about the business side of it. I'm like, but that's also how I make a living. But it's also my passion, right? So I think if you could bring up an example, I would be glad to address that more specifically, but I'm not sure I completely understand exactly what you would like me to do with that question, how you'd like me to answer that. Zanka, good to see you too. Wade, it happened to me many times, even when I was apologizing, but it chose me the time isn't right for them to fix whatever has happened. Yeah, timing is quite common in terms of when we think something is appropriate versus when when the appropriate time is for someone to actually receive and hear and address, right, whatever it is that we are having a difficult time with. JR from Thailand. Caroline said, better not to get emotions, feelings bottled in, as it can be suffocating. Yes, absolutely. And And that's where I would say, when it comes to emotions being bottled in, maybe the person you need to speak to is not the person that you are having these strong emotions towards, right? If you're feeling a lot of strong emotions, you don't even know how to express it, and everything's coming out in tears and loud voices and swear words, I'd say talk to a friend first. Talk to a friend, let all of that out. And then when you are a little bit calmer, when you can clarify what it is that you actually want to address, then you can go and speak to the person that you actually have some kind of issue with. All right. Continuing on. The best is when you realize you have been venting verbal diarrhea. Yeah. Trust me, Kavork, I've had many moments of verbal diarrhea, right? My best friends can speak to that the best. Sometimes it's better to lay down your cases with someone that you trust and see how well you can communicate your intentions to gaining awareness and leading your intentions correctly. Absolutely. Matthew said, I'll send you my dilemmas via the website. Matthew, you should be able to see that link, magnagopal.com/feedback. Please, again, take the time. It would mean so much to me. It'll take like 5 minutes of your life, but it will leave an impression on me forever if you could take that time to fill out that form, magnagopal.com/feedback. Okay. Even if you've been to multiple live chats, even if you've completed a form in the past, this is a different topic that we are addressing today, and I would love to hear your thoughts on it. Caroline, it's always helpful to verbalize how you felt instead of what the other person did to you. Another great point. Thank you for saying that. Yes, in addition to just commenting and focusing on the actual action that had happened, it's great to, as Caroline said, to verbalize how you felt, right? This happened and this is how it's made me feel. Right? So it's not even pointing the finger at the other person. It's clearly saying, I feel this way. And again, if you can take it one step further in terms of vulnerability, especially if you haven't clarified and completely understand what it is that you're feeling, then it helps to say, this is what you did. This is how it made me feel. I'm not entirely sure why I feel so strongly about this. I'd like to understand that too. Also, I have a new mic, a lapel mic that I bought for live chats, and my stomach just grumbled. So if anyone heard that on Facebook and on YouTube, please throw it in the comment. Be like, what is that? Got some dogs growling at your feet? So brilliant question here. I guess we are going a little bit over on this one. Let me just take a look here. On questions help create be more. The more questions answered helps create more open-mindedness. Angel, great point. All right, I can't scroll on Instagram that much. Question from Wade. How should we react? I just put that. How should we react when we're the one on the receiving end of a friend's venting? How to know if your role is to listen or give your perspective without judgment? Excellent question. You remember what I said before about understanding? Ask the question, right? Are you just want to vent? I've done that. I've had friends, call me up and be like, oh my God, I got to tell you this, right? That just sounds like you got to tell me something, versus some friends who call me and say, hey, I want to get your opinion on this. This is what I'm feeling, right? And if they don't preface their conversation with that, then you can also possibly ask, right? Say, hey, do you, I don't know if it's my place, and I don't know if you want to hear this, but do you want my opinion on this? This is kind of what I'm getting from this, but by all means, I don't have to share that, right? And then you can see if they're open to hearing that. Another comment, Wade, there's some great point about the timing and space that I would be sending to a friend to check out in the clip. Fantastic. When X, I felt disrespected. Or Kavork, another way to present something. How about when this time I felt disrespected? Yeah. Mark said, if lessons are learned, this means you learned it in the past. In the present, if you recognize behavior that lead to a negative outcome, would your action be due to emotions or experience? I think it's always kind of a combination, I feel like our experience obviously does lay the path. Our experience lays the path for kind of how we approach life. But there are many experiences that we've had that we don't necessarily acknowledge or address in the same way as others. Right? There are some experiences in my life that I can very clearly point to and say, oh, yeah, this happened and this is why I think this way. But there are many experiences. I mean, so many, and with my memory, I don't even remember half the things, but there are probably many things that I just pushed aside because they were painful, or because I didn't want to address them at that time, but I didn't also take the time to address them later. But they are still there. They're still present. They're still having their role. They're just still coming in there and like kind of poking around to see where they can set themselves up, right? And those are the ones that we don't necessarily know about. So our emotions today are often tied to those experiences, as well as whatever we're feeling today, right? However, this current moment feels, which has nothing to do with the past. Because if I'm hungry, I'm probably hangry too, right? So not that I'm actually like angry about a situation, but goddamn, I need to eat. And now everything else is contributing to that hanger, right? What do I have to say? Toxicity. Big question. Ludwig, I see your question about losing the mojo after 20 years due to toxicity in the community. Please send me a question in the feedback form. We are going over our time today, so I won't be able to address that in this live chat, but I'd love to take that on in a future live. What are your thoughts on excessive sarcasm in a relationship? Irina asked, what are your thoughts on excessive sarcasm in a relationship? I am personally quite a sarcastic person, so I do use it very freely and playfully, actually, but it's the timing, right? Again, going back to that timing issue, is it the right time? Is it the most appropriate time? If you are dealing with something that is sensitive in nature, perhaps sarcasm isn't the tool to use. I'm going to give you an example with one of my best friends. When she lived here in New Jersey, she had a very New York, New Jersey attitude, right? And so this is not specifically about sarcasm, but a little bit more about like teasing nicknames and stuff like that. So everyone just forgive me for this coming up. But when she was here, we would, constantly be like, we wouldn't say the B word, but we were like, yo, biatch, right? And kind of like call each other those names, very playfully, very affectionately, very endearingly, right? That's just how we talk to each other. And we would swear and curse in all of our sentences as well, when we were communicating. Then she moved, and she moved to somewhere that is a much more polite, like Southern hospitality style, right? Where no one's really talking the way New Yorkers do. That attitude and that sass is kind of not present over there. Everyone's very polite and, oh, how can I do this, miss, sir, blah, 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 right? So after living there for many years, this is my best friend. She again, knows that I love her, right? And I remember spending some time, and kind of like the first time that we spoke after some time that she was living there, I remember talking to her in the same way, right? I went to visit, started talking to her in the same way. And she was like, Magna, that kind of hurts now. And I was like, oh my God, really? But we always talk like this. And she's like, yeah, but I think it's just being around people here and never hearing that. Now it just seems so harsh because it's in contrast to everything else that I'm hearing, right? Whereas living over here in New York, everyone's talking like that, right? So it doesn't stand out as something distinctly different, and harsh. But over there, no one's talking like that. So all of a sudden I come over there and I'm saying this to her, and she's like, I know you don't mean to offend me, but it's kind of feels hurtful, right? Because the only time anyone speaks like that to anybody here is when they're actually truly upset about something and they don't like that person. So excessive sarcasm in a relationship, I would say the best way is to, nip it in the bud and just say, look, I like your sarcasm. It's funny in all of these situations, but I think when it pertains to this topic, it's kind of a little bit hurtful, and it feels like I don't think you're listening to me, or I feel like you're being dismissive of something that I'm bringing up, and then see what they say. Because sometimes a person might say, oh, I'm not. And you can say, I understand that you're not, but this is how I feel. So if you don't mind, can we skip doing that in this situation, in this scenario, right? And perhaps they say, maybe they might ask questions, right? To like, why do you feel that way? And perhaps that'll help you understand that further as well. But in terms of communication and conversation, whatever you feel, is valid. I just want to clarify that as well, right? When we feel hurt, it's valid. Like, it's okay to feel hurt, even if that hurt is not actually tied to whatever this person did, but is actually tied to a trigger that is from you holding on to a past relationship or something like that. It's still valid. What you feel is valid. However, it's important to communicate that with somebody, and it's important to have people in our lives that can understand and appreciate that we have those feelings. It's not to say that everyone needs to cater to you, right? You're hurt about everything. Well, I'm sorry, that's not how life works, right? But the people that are really close to you in your life should understand those things and want to understand those things and try to make changes that allow for you to have a healthy relationship that feels nurturing and fulfilling and helps you both grow. So hopefully that helps. Okay, so I have a couple of questions here. Gold Mademoiselle says, if you're sleep deprived and hungry, it's probably not the time to have a serious conversation at that moment. Absolutely. Yeah. And yet so many people insist, right? I mean, I'll go to dance. Dance is a perfect example. End of the night, after a long night of dancing, you've been dancing for who knows how many hours, especially at a congress or something like that. You haven't eaten for who knows how many hours, right? And then there's some issue with the person that you're dating, and that person brings that up in that moment. Like, it's 4 a.m., and you're like, really? Now? This is the time? Couldn't talk about it tomorrow morning after a good night's rest and a breakfast? So yeah, timing is everything. Okay. Another question is, how big is an addiction? How big is an addiction by ending a relationship? Because I see or hear a lot off-ended. How big is addiction in? I think I'm reading this. I hope I'm reading this correctly. How big is addiction in ending a relationship? Because I see and hear a lot of ended relationships are due to addictions. Is ending it directly a solution? Depends on the addiction, and it depends on the steps that are being taken towards addressing that addiction, I would say. I mean, ultimately, an addiction takes away the time and energy, emotions, mental, physical, all of these things. It takes those things right out of your life. It consumes that part of your life, and that time that you were spent on that addiction is no longer available to any of the other compartments in your life. So it depends on the addiction, and like salsa dancing, right? A lot of people feel addicted to salsa. I mean, for many years, especially my first few years, I was dancing all the time. I was definitely addicted to it. I'm still quite addicted to it. I just don't go out as much as I used to, but I was out every single night of the week, going out dancing in Toronto. And yeah, I would call it an addiction. I had like a great time, and that's everything I wanted to do revolved around dance. What did that do? Well, I would end up at school tired. Oftentimes I missed classes, right? So you have to see how that addiction is playing into what other aspects of your life are important. Salsa, I think, is kind of harmless, but there are obviously other addictions like alcohol or drugs or things that are really damaging to your body as well. Those, I would say, probably better talk to a professional about that, or a community that can provide that kind of support for those addictions. But it doesn't need to mean the end of a relationship. It just needs to be addressed, right? Every relationship, whatever that relationship it is, whether it is to your own body, to your own health, whether it is to work, right, your commitments there, whether it is to your family, whether it is to your significant other, or whether it is to your parent or to your child, right? If your addiction is affecting how you can perform and how you can show up in these other areas of your life, when they are important areas of your life that absolutely need your attention, then you have to kind of make a choice. And sometimes that choice will be made for you. right? If I cannot address your addiction, if I cannot actually change anything about that addiction by redirecting your attention, because that's what addiction is, right? You're just on that and nothing else is better than this, right? If I can't redirect your attention, then it's no longer healthy for me to be in that situation. So I'll either refer you to somebody else or I'll just let you go, right? And I might not be there along your path to recovery. And that is the challenge with an addiction, right? Is that's what happens. You lose control over the thing, the activity, or the substance that you are attracted to, or have this uncontrollable desire to spend time with or consume, and you can't make rational decisions and healthy decisions about other areas of your life. So is ending a relationship directly a solution to relationships that have these problems with addictions? I think that is on a case by case basis. And it really depends on, I guess, the potential for recovery, because staying in a situation where there is a severe addiction that is not only affecting the health of the person involved, or not, and by health I mean even in dance, right? You'd be dancing all the time and you're just sleeping late, you're super tired, you're not performing at work, right? You're not working out properly, you're not eating properly, right? That's affecting your health too, right? So most people consider it a healthy addiction, but still in moderation, right? Even though moderation, I'd push it a little bit higher than the moderation mid-level. But yeah, if it's affecting that person's health, that's one issue, right? And it's hard for you to be in a relationship with somebody and see them suffer, and other areas of their life suffer. But then there's the other element, like, how is it affecting you, right? Are you, like, what is this doing to you? Is this consuming you as well, indirectly or directly? And is it better for you to maybe exit that situation, that environment, and that relationship? Right? So it's kind of unfortunate. It's pretty sad, especially when it comes to like substance abuse and things like that. But, you know, you can be as supportive as you can. And then at some points, it's not within your control. And we can't pretend to know everything and play God and say, well, oh, yeah, don't worry, I'll fix you. You know, that's pretty arrogant of us to think that. And sometimes we just need to let go. Felicia, see. Okay, last couple of comments and questions here. Vittorio, hello. Crawford said, thank you for your great answer. My addiction was salsa into a lot of unnecessary jealousy, created a lot of friction. It was so not done for me, and saw it a lot with my friends as well. Yeah, I could see that. Goldman as well said, what guidelines do you recommend when picking a salsa instructor or school? If you can, please send me a message, maybe a direct message or an email, and I can provide you with a little bit more information there. I would also recommend you check out my video on YouTube, Empathy in Teaching. It'll help you maybe understand what kind of learning environment is the best and most helpful for your growth. You can check that out, or you can send me a message and I can send you a link to that as well. All right, Ahmed from Egypt, back in the house, back on the grid. Nice to see you. All right, folks. So I am going to just say some final thoughts on communication. Again, I think intention is everything when it comes to communication. Conversations with somebody depends on what you are trying to achieve from that person, and from that relationship. And if you can set your intention right, I think it's easier for us to approach it with the tools that are necessary to make that connection with the person and to ultimately find that resolution. We talked about some 5 main things that I would say are like can sabotage that ability to have effective communication and a meaningful conversation with someone. And then we went into all those details as well. So if you're just joining now, you can check out the replay. It's going to be on YouTube. And if you can, please, please, please take a time, even if you're watching the replay right now, please take the time to complete the form, magnagopal.com/feedback. Throw your thoughts in there. If you've been asking me some questions here in the comments and I have not addressed them yet, please add them to the feedback form, okay, along with your thoughts and your experiences, so that I can address them in the future, or I can reply to you directly. But the best place to put your questions at this point, as we're closing up today, is in the feedback form, because Instagram, I will lose all the comments. It does not save any of the comments. And Facebook and YouTube, they're kind of spread out on like 3 pages. So the best place is on the feedback form. So please, 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 if you've been here, especially if you stayed the whole time with me for an hour and 20 minutes, please take 5 more minutes and complete that form for me. And finally, if you would like to, show your support, the easiest way, no cost whatsoever, is to subscribe to the channel on YouTube or on Instagram. Instagram, go to YouTube too, I would say. And yeah, hit like if you feel like any of these parts are super relevant or could be useful to anybody else. You can share that too. If you want live coaching, or if you want to hire me as a speaker for an event or your company or anything like that, magnagopal.com is where you can find all of that information. And finally, if you are interested in dance, especially online training, whether it's dance or fitness, magnagopal.com, you can find all that information as well. Okay. On demand, I have an entire membership as well as courses, a tutorials database for fitness training, the stuff that I do, mindset training as well, which obviously you can see applies across the board. And then a bunch of dance tutorials on various topics that can help take your dancing to another level, not just with technicality, but also with intention, right? And with that, thank you very much. I hope you all have an absolutely lovely afternoon, Wednesday afternoon or evening, depending on where you are. Thank you for your questions. Hi, Herb. John Walker said, I'm not comfortable in speaking with people. What should I do? You can send me a direct message or shoot me an email, magnagopal.com. We can discuss that a little bit further. Or you can check out the last live chat where we did actually talk about, maybe it's a speech. Send me a message or actually complete the feedback form, and I'll send you the links that I'm referring to. That might help. Okay. Thank you again, Wade. Thank you for the live session. Learned a great approach on my communication skills. Glad to hear it. Have a fantastic rest of your day. Bye, folks. Bye, Instagram peoples. Bye, Facebook. Bye, YouTube.